had received improper representation by public defenders, and then DNA evidence showed that they were not the person that did the crime, or witnesses came forward. I mean, they just kept finding that a high proportion of the people on death row were not guilty at all. But even if they are guilty, you know, taking another life doesn't bring back the first one. And we know it doesn't deter, so I'm opposed to the death penalty. I think it's bad public policy and it's immoral.
Labor, Taft-Hartley, NAFTA, WTO, your own personal history.
Well, working people in this country really need to start pushing for reform of the labor laws. Since the Taft-Hartley Act in the 40s passed, it's been very hard for us to expand the union movement. In fact, we've been in retreat ever since. So one of the things I would do if I was senator is fight hard to repeal Taft-Hartley. I would push hard for a card check recognition program like they have in Canada, where once the majority of people at a work site check off a card that they want a union, they'd be a bargaining unit and could begin bargaining with their employer. I'm a member of the Teamsters Union, and I think one of the few labor struggles that we've won in the last 30 years was the strike we had in '96. And we're facing contract renewal in a couple of years, and that's going to be a big deal. But we're really at a loss with the way the labor laws are stacked against organizing, and also the way labor laws are administered, the National Labor Relations Board. The appointees are generally pro-business, and the resources since the Clinton years have not been put into it. So when there is a grievance, it takes too long to work its way through the system. So by the time it's proven the employer was breaking the law to stop a union drive, the people you're trying to organize are long gone, and you have to start from scratch. So, you know, employers are willing to get the wrist slaps they get from the NLRB in order to stop union drives. So we need also resources so NLRB can respond on a timely fashion when grievances are filed.
NAFTA, WTO, that's Clinton's role.
Well, another reason we're losing jobs in New York is NAFTA and the World Trade Organization. And in fact, the area with the most, that qualified for the most trade adjustment benefits, workers, which was part of NAFTA, was Central New York. And these are trade agreements that are basically set up trade bureaucracies that are beyond the control of our democratic process. They preempt even national laws that regulate the health, safety, environmental, and labor standards. And what the effect of the trade agreements like NAFTA and the World Trade Organization has been to bring down labor and environmental standards on both sides of borders. And we need a different trade policy, a fair trade policy, and new trade agreements that level up standards across borders. So for example, people today talk about an immigration crisis with Mexico, Mexicans coming to the United States. That's really a humanitarian crisis caused by NAFTA and our support for repealing a good program in Mexico, which was the Ejido land system, which enabled Mexicans to have access to land for subsistence farming. And that was public land, and all you had to do was farm it to occupy it. And what they did was repeal that under the encouragement of the United States, and what it has enabled is agribusiness to buy up the best farmland, push peasants off the land. And then NAFTA enabled U.S. subsidized corn to go down there and undercut the local corn farmers in Mexico, and they're being pushed off the land. So they come north for work. A fair trade agreement would help the Mexicans, you know, subsist on their own land in a decent standard of living, rather than try to exploit them, is what these trade agreements do now. So we need to revamp our whole trade policy.
Marriage equality and reproductive freedom, and you know, where the other candidates are on this too.
Well, on the question of marriage equality or legalizing same-sex marriage, I say do it. There are 1,138 rights and responsibilities in federal law and over 700 in New York law that go with civil marriage. That's licensed by the state. It has everything to do from workers' compensation to control over the remains of your partner. And those rights should be enjoyed by same-sex couples as much as different-sex couples. That's just simple, equal justice under the law. And, you know, this is an issue the Greens pioneered when even some gay rights advocates say it was too soon, when Jason West, mayor of New Paltz, started marriage ceremonies in New Paltz. And it started the whole court proceeding in New York which now we have the state Supreme Court in a ridiculous decision saying the state constitution and state law does not permit same-sex marriage. I've read a brief by the about 150 law professors who I think made a convincing argument to the other way, that it is permissible under New York Constitution and New York law. But the interesting thing is public opinion is moving very quickly to accept same-sex marriage. It's a majority in New York now, 53% according to the most recent poll. So now that's my position. The position of Hillary Clinton is she's for civil unions but not marriage. But without civil marriage licenses, you don't get access to those rights that are in the federal and state laws. And it also stigmatizes same-sex marriage. And those are families that are raising children. They are brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, you know, and those are all of us, most of us have people, you know, who are gay or lesbian and in our families, and they shouldn't be stigmatized because, you know, we want to build families up, not tear them apart. So I'm for legalizing same-sex marriage. The question of reproductive freedom, every woman should have access to a safe and legal abortion, and I believe through a single-payer public health system. Whatever you think about abortion, you should be opposed to illegal back alley abortions because women are going to try to terminate pregnancies that they don't want. And there should be a safe way for them to do that. And so I'm for you know, making that free, safe, legal, and it's just a matter of a woman's right to control her own body.
Social Security.
What we should do there is no real crisis. There is a little bit of a funding problem down the road. If we raise the cap on Social Security taxes, which now is around $86,000, it's a flat tax. Whatever you pay, a certain percentage of your income, of your wages, not all your income. If you have profits, you know, dividends, interest, you don't pay Social Security on tax. It's only on wages and salary. If we raise the cap on that to from $86,000 up to $200,000 or $300,000 and just paid the same rate up to that level, Social Security would be self-funding indefinitely into the future. And that's what we should do. We shouldn't privatize it, and we shouldn't scare the hell out of people that their Social Security won't be there. Actually, it's running a surplus now and funding the rest of the government. And as long as the government doesn't collapse, you know, those obligations will be met.
Education.
Well, the federal government should provide more funds for states and localities through revenue sharing, which then localities and states can decide how to spend. It should also provide money for education. The problem we have now in New York State, of course, is that we're dependent on the property tax, and New York City, and by extension the state, is under court order to find an equitable way of financing public education. I think it ought to be funded out of income taxes that are progressive, and then you redistribute to the districts on a per capita basis with simple adjustments to deal with special circumstances and needs. And the role of the federal government is to, as a centralized government, you should have centralized taxation on a progressive basis. In other words, the rich pay at a higher rate than the poor, and then you decentralize the administration. You provide those resources to states and localities and let them make the detailed decisions at the local level. And that's the opposite of unfunded mandates, is what we've got now with federal government under Bush, No Child Left Behind, so-called, set up a whole lot of mandates that required local districts to spend money on testing and other things, but didn't provide the funds. And that's the opposite of what we want. It's, well, I like to say both Democrats and Republican leaderships betray their own bases. The corporate leadership of the Republican Party betrays the base of the Republican Party, which wants fiscal responsibility, local decision-making, and avoidance of foreign entanglements. And what we've had from the Republicans is record deficits, foreign entanglements, and unfunded mandates. And the Democratic Party says they're for the working people. And what we've had from the Democratic Party, well, look at the Clinton administration. We had the repeal and cuts in welfare. We had NAFTA